The wind howled across the shattered plains, carrying with it the smell of smoke and scorched earth. Craters from explosions pocked the land, and the twisted remains of what had once been a village lay scattered under the gray sky. Amid the wreckage, a single human baby cried, tiny arms flailing and tears mixing with soot on its small face. It was alone, fragile, and completely unaware of the dangers surrounding it. Above, dragons circled the sky, their massive wings cutting through the cold air. Some were curious, others cautious. They had never seen humans like this before, soft and unarmored, so small and defenseless. Most of the dragons preferred to keep their distance, unsure if the tiny creature was a threat or prey. But one dragon, older and larger than the others, swooped down silently, landing with a gentle tremor on the snow-crusted ground. Its eyes, deep and knowing, studied the baby carefully. The infant, sensing no immediate danger, continued to cry, the sound tiny against the roar of the wind. The dragon's sharp senses detected the baby's heartbeat and its faint scent of fear mixed with life. It was unusual, even to beings who could smell far-off storms or detect the tremors of an approaching herd. The large dragon extended its claw slowly, hovering just above the baby. It lowered its snout, careful not to touch the fragile skin, and sniffed. The infant's cry faltered for a moment, curiosity mingling with fear. Then the baby gurgled, reaching tiny hands toward the dragon, unaware of its massive power. The older dragon froze, surprised. It had expected the human to recoil or cry louder, but instead, it sensed something else, an unusual courage in the small creature. A whisper of instinct told the dragon to protect rather than harm. Around them, other dragons hesitated in the sky, wings spread, uncertain. They had never seen a human survive alone in such a desolate place. Some shifted nervously, claws scraping the icy rocks, while others circled higher, watching silently. Without warning, a sudden gust of wind threw snow into the baby's face. The infant coughed and began to cry harder, its small body trembling from cold and fear. The dragon's large eyes softened. It carefully nudged the baby with the tip of its snout, enough to warm the child with its breath, yet gentle enough to avoid harm. The baby paused, sensing warmth and safety for the first time since the village was destroyed. Tiny fingers clutched the dragon's claw, unsure but unafraid. Nearby, a few younger dragons whispered among themselves, their voices soft and low. They had heard tales of humans being frail and weak, not creatures to be saved. But this one was different. It survived the fire, the ruins, and the cold. Its heartbeat, though tiny, was steady. Its cries, though small, were persistent. And most astonishing of all, it did not run from the giant watchers above. The older dragon, sensing a decision to be made, slowly lowered its head closer to the baby. Its wings tucked carefully against its body, and it let out a low rumble that vibrated through the ground. The sound was strange to the baby, not frightening but soothing, a deep, steady vibration that seemed to say, "You are not alone." The infant stopped crying for a brief moment, gazing at the dragon's massive, golden eyes with wide wonder. Other dragons in the sky began to circle lower, intrigued. They had never witnessed a human interact with their kind in this way. There was a tension, a fragile hope that perhaps this small creature could survive, and maybe even belong in their world. The snow swirled around them, covering footprints and traces of the battle behind. For the first time, the battlefield seemed quiet, as if the wind itself had paused to watch. The older dragon carefully lifted the baby with its claw, supporting its small body with delicate precision. The infant clung instinctively, wrapping its tiny arms around the warm scales, feeling safe despite the immense size of its rescuer. Dragons that had once hovered in fear now landed nearby, creating a circle of guardians around the child. No one dared make a sudden move. Even the wind seemed to wait, holding its breath, while the dragons considered what to do next. The baby cooed softly, its cries fading into contentment as it nestled against the dragon's chest. It was a simple gesture, yet profound, a silent agreement between species that would shape the future. The large dragon's eyes met those of the others, signaling that the decision had been made. This human would not be left to die in the ruins. The dragons would protect it, at least for now. As the sun dipped low behind the smoky horizon, casting long shadows across the icy plain, the human infant rested in the dragon's careful grasp. The battle's devastation still surrounded them, but in that small, quiet moment, hope existed. A new story was beginning, one that neither humans nor dragons could have predicted. The lost baby had survived, and the dragons, ancient and fearsome, were watching with interest, ready to see what this fragile, small creature could become. The dragons returned to their soaring city nestled atop jagged cliffs, the human baby still cradled carefully in the claws of the oldest guardian. The city shimmered with scales that reflected the dying sun, towers twisting like ancient trees, and walkways suspended high in the air. Every dragon who saw the child whispered among themselves, voices vibrating with curiosity and concern. The elders, massive and regal, gathered in a great hall carved from living rock, the walls glowing faintly with bioluminescent veins. The eldest dragon, silver-scaled with eyes that gleamed like molten gold, lowered the baby onto a soft bed of woven leaves and moss. The infant looked around with wide eyes, sensing warmth and safety, but still too young to understand the gravity of the moment. The other dragons settled in a circle, wings folded, their massive bodies creating a ring of guardianship. The air hummed with anticipation. No dragon had ever brought a human into the court before, and this decision was not to be taken lightly. "Who dares enter our court unbidden?" rumbled a deep voice echoing off the walls. It was the Dragon King, enormous and fearsome, scales dark as night with streaks of silver, eyes burning like twin suns. Every dragon in the hall bowed their heads slightly in respect, and the child cooed softly, oblivious to the tension. The eldest guardian, who had found the baby in the ruins, spoke in low, measured tones. "Your Majesty, this human was lost in the frozen plains. Alone it survived the fire and snow, untouched by fear or harm. I bring it here for judgment." Murmurs rippled through the court. Many dragons had seen humans before. They were fragile, frail creatures, unable to survive without protection, often dependent on their technology and numbers. Some dragons snorted in disbelief, wings twitching nervously. "Why not leave it in the ruins to perish?" "That is natural," one young dragon hissed. The elder guardian's eyes narrowed. "It is not nature alone that decides. This child shows a resilience beyond expectation. It lives not by chance but by instinct and courage. That is rare. Such traits deserve acknowledgement." The Dragon King leaned forward, nostrils flaring as he sniffed the air around the baby. Even from this distance, the faint scent of human warmth and life reached him. He studied the child closely. There was no fear in its eyes, only curiosity and trust toward the dragons. He had never seen such fearlessness in a human so young. "Bring it closer," the king commanded. The baby was lifted gently and held before him. The infant's gaze met the king's and the room fell silent. For a moment, it seemed the human and the dragon communicated without words. The baby's tiny hands reached toward the dragon's snout, and though it was small and fragile, there was a spark, an awareness that this being was different from all it had encountered. The Dragon Queen, seated beside the king, coiled her tail slowly and spoke softly, her voice like distant thunder. "Perhaps this is not merely a human. Perhaps it carries the spark of something greater. It survived the ruins, the cold, the fire. And it approached without fear. That is a trait our people respect deeply." The king's gaze swept across the council, massive wings twitching in thought. "It is unprecedented," he said. "To elevate a human to our court would be unheard of. Yet to dismiss one who shows courage and trust could be folly." He paused, his massive head lowered closer to the infant. "What do you wish, little one?" he asked, voice rumbling like the mountains themselves. The baby gurgled, reaching a tiny hand toward the king's horn. There was no malice, no fear, only instinctive curiosity. The room seemed to hold its breath. The dragons whispered softly among themselves. Could such a fragile being truly belong in their world? The elders nodded to one another, recognizing the rare courage and trust in the child's gaze. After a long silence, the king spoke again. "Let it stay. Let it learn our ways, under the guardianship of those who rescued it. If it thrives, it shall be part of our legacy, not as a mere visitor, but as one who has earned the right to walk among us." A chorus of agreement rippled through the court, wings brushing the walls with soft thuds. Even the younger dragons, skeptical moments before, lowered their heads in acceptance. The decision was made. The human, fragile though it seemed, would not only live but learn, grow, and eventually take a place among the dragons. The elder guardian gently lifted the baby and cradled it against her chest once more. The child cooed and wriggled happily, sensing safety and warmth. The king watched closely, a faint rumble in his throat that the other dragons recognized as approval. The child's presence, small and unthreatening, had already begun to change the court. For the first time in centuries, the dragons saw that courage did not always come from size or strength. Sometimes it came from small hearts, unafraid, unbowed, and willing to trust. And in that small trust, the seeds of something new, something that could bridge worlds, were quietly planted. As the evening sun dipped below the cliffs, casting long golden shadows over the city. The human baby rested in the guardian's arms, eyes wide and sparkling. The court, ancient and powerful, had spoken. The child was no longer a lost human in the ruins. The baby was now part of the dragon court, a symbol of courage, trust, and the beginning of a bond that could span generations. The dragons whispered to one another in low, approving tones, acknowledging the unusual decision. Outside, the wind carried the faint scent of snow and smoke, mingling with the warmth of life. And somewhere deep within the ancient city, a legend quietly began. A story of a human child who entered the dragon court and, without understanding, had earned a place in their hearts and history. The human child grew quickly under the watchful eyes of the dragon guardians. Days passed in a rhythm unlike anything the child had known, filled with lessons in patience, observation, and respect. The dragons moved with grace and power, wings folding and stretching in ways that seemed impossible, voices deep and resonant, carrying wisdom across the high, twisting halls of their city. The child, small and fragile compared to the massive beings around, learned to mimic their movements, reaching out with tiny hands to touch scales, listening carefully to their soft hums, feeling their warmth. At first, the young human struggled. The dragon's ways were foreign, their expectations high. Climbing on a dragon's back was terrifying at first, and even simply walking among them without causing disruption required careful attention. But the child had something the dragons quickly noticed: courage and patience beyond its years. While other humans might have cried or resisted, this one observed quietly, learning through imitation, smiling when a dragon nodded approvingly. The elder guardians took turns guiding the child. One, a massive gold-scale dragon with eyes like molten metal, taught the child to sense the air currents inside the great hall, to understand the subtle shifts in wind and temperature. "Feel the air, little one," the dragon rumbled. "It tells you everything." The child tilted its head, reaching out tiny hands to mimic the elder's movements, feeling the drafts against its skin, sensing patterns the child did not yet understand, but gradually began to recognize. Meals became lessons too. Dragons did not eat as humans did. They tore at enormous slabs of meat, but the guardians made allowances. The child learned to hold utensils with care, to share the warmth of fire without fear, and to respect the space around them. Every action, no matter how small, was observed. The dragons whispered among themselves in approval when the child completed a task correctly, their deep voices vibrating through the hall. Play was also part of the learning. The dragons allowed the child to chase glowing orbs through the hall, teaching the value of reflexes and observation without danger. The child laughed, a sound that seemed to lighten even the heavy atmosphere of the dragon city. For the dragons, this laughter was unfamiliar but compelling. They had never seen such small joy emanate naturally from a creature so fragile. Some young dragons, initially skeptical, began to approach the child during these games, their massive heads lowering gently as they learned that the human posed no threat. One day the Dragon King himself came to watch. The child was practicing balance atop a low ridge of rock inside the great hall, arms outstretched, eyes fixed ahead. The king observed silently, his enormous wings folding neatly at his sides. He noted the careful concentration, the courage to stand in a place where even a small misstep could result in a fall. For the first time he felt a spark of approval for a human so young. "Resilience comes in many forms," he murmured to his queen. "Perhaps we underestimated them." The dragon's language was deep and resonant, often spoken in vibrations rather than sound alone. The child learned to listen, feeling the meanings rather than simply hearing words. Simple commands became cues for understanding more complex ideas. A nudge from a claw meant attention, a soft hum meant encouragement, and a flick of a tail could indicate danger. The child adapted quickly, learning to sense these cues instinctively, growing more confident each day. Beyond learning from the dragons, the child began to form connections. A small silver-scaled dragon, slightly younger than the elders, took a particular interest, curling near the child at rest, sharing warmth and quiet companionship. The child would stroke the scales, marveling at their texture, and the young dragon would nuzzle back. Other dragons observed this bond with curiosity, recognizing that the human had begun to integrate naturally into their society. Despite all the lessons and guidance, the child retained a distinctly human quality: innovation. Where the dragons relied on instinct and tradition, the child experimented. Using small tools left by visitors from distant worlds, the human modified simple devices to assist in climbing, balancing, or observing more closely. The dragons watched this with a mixture of fascination and mild apprehension. It was unusual, they noted, for a human to combine observation with such inventiveness at such a young age. Seasons changed outside the great city, but inside the child's growth was steady. Strength came not from size but from understanding, courage, and trust. The dragons, initially wary, began to respect the human's resilience. Small accomplishments, balancing on ledges, understanding the subtle shifts in the air, reading the guardian's vibrations, were celebrated with gentle hums and approving gestures. Even the skeptical young dragons began to mimic the child's gestures in play, recognizing that this human had earned a place among them. By the time the child could walk steadily, climb safely, and understand the dragon's language of hums and gestures, something remarkable had occurred. The dragons no longer saw the human as fragile or helpless. They saw a participant in their world, a being capable of learning, adapting, and earning respect. A bridge had formed between species, not through power or dominance, but through trust, patience, and courage. The Dragon King watched from his perch above the hall one evening, eyes softening as he observed the child sleeping gently curled against a guardian. Perhaps, he said more to himself than anyone else, this human is more than we imagined. In time, it may even teach us something of our own hearts. And so, in the twisting halls of the Dragon City, the human child continued to grow, surrounded by beings of immense power, learning not only their ways, but also teaching them, in small, unexpected ways, the value of trust, courage, and the quiet strength of a tiny heart. The legends of the dragons would speak of this time long after, the tale of a human who entered the court not as a conqueror, but as a learner, and in doing so became part of something greater than itself. The dragons had watched the human child grow, learning their ways and earning their trust, but the elders knew that true acceptance required more than observation and play. It required a test, a proving of courage, intelligence, and heart. The trial of fire, as it was called, was a rite of passage for all young dragons. It tested not just strength but calmness under pressure, awareness, and the ability to act wisely when danger arose. Now, they decided it was time for the human child to face a version of this trial. The trial area was a vast canyon filled with jagged rocks and smoldering fissures. Heat rose from the ground in waves, and clouds of smoke curled in the narrow passages. Even young dragons approached the area cautiously, and many had learned to respect it without stepping inside. The human child, though small and delicate, walked at the edge of the canyon, shoulders squared, eyes bright with curiosity rather than fear. A golden elder dragon accompanied the child, its massive form casting a shadow across the canyon floor. "You will face the challenge as we do," the elder rumbled. "But remember, this is not about strength. Observe, think, and act. Trust yourself." The child nodded, though the full meaning of the warning was not yet clear. Every step into the canyon sent a tremor of heat through bare feet, and the scent of molten stone and smoke filled the air. The human moved slowly, hands brushing against the rock walls for balance, eyes scanning for safe paths. The dragons, circling above, watched silently, their eyes like molten fire, reflecting the tension of the moment. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from a narrow crevice ahead. A fire lizard, a small but fiercely territorial creature, had claimed this part of the canyon as its own. Its scales shimmered with heat, and its eyes glowed like embers. Dragons instinctively knew to give it space, but humans rarely understood such things. The child froze, then remembered the lessons learned: patience, observation, respect. Slowly the child knelt, extending a hand but not approaching too quickly. The lizard hissed, smoke curling from its nostrils, but the human remained calm. Using a gentle voice, more instinct than language, the child spoke softly, shifting weight carefully, showing no threat. The lizard, after tense moments, backed down and slipped into the shadows, leaving the path clear. The dragons above stirred slightly, murmuring among themselves in approval. As the child moved deeper into the canyon, the challenges grew. A sudden burst of heat erupted from a fissure, sending sparks into the air. Where a dragon would leap or fly, the child needed to navigate carefully, timing steps to avoid the heat, keeping balance on uneven stones. Sweat ran down the child's brow, but panic never surfaced. Each movement was deliberate, each breath controlled. The dragons observed, noting the human's ability to adapt to danger without fear, a trait they valued highly. Then came the most critical test: a rickety bridge of stone over a pit of molten rock. The stones were narrow and unstable, shifting slightly under weight. Even a small misstep could be fatal. Dragons crossed easily, wings providing balance, but the human child had nothing but steady feet and careful focus. The child paused, eyes tracing the path, memorizing each stone's position, then moved forward, one careful step at a time. Sparks flew from the edges, heat licked at the ankles, but the child never faltered. Halfway across, a small stone cracked beneath a foot, tilting dangerously. Instinctively, the child leapt to the next stable stone, landing lightly, heart racing but mind clear. Dragons above let out a low, approving rumble. The final challenge awaited at the canyon's end, a sudden gap too wide to step across. It required trust in one's body, timing, and the courage to leap without certainty. The child looked down at the molten pit below, feeling the heat radiate upward. For a moment, hesitation flickered, but then memory of lessons learned returned: trust, courage, observation. The child bent knees, focused forward, and jumped, landing on the other side with a controlled roll. The dragons above circled, wings casting enormous shadows, eyes gleaming with admiration. The golden elder approached, nudging the child gently with its snout. "Few dragons your age," it rumbled, "have faced the trial of fire with such calm and wisdom. You have not only survived, but you have earned understanding." The child smiled, exhaustion evident, but a sense of accomplishment shining through. The dragons whispered among themselves, acknowledging the human's courage, ingenuity, and heart. In the following hours, the dragons led the child to the highest point of the canyon. From here, the vast city below stretched like a living maze of stone and fire. The elder looked down and said, "You have proven that courage is not measured by size or strength, but by wisdom and calm in the face of danger. You are one of us in ways that matter." The child's eyes widened, understanding the weight of the moment. This was more than survival, it was acceptance, recognition from beings far greater and older than any human could imagine. The other dragons approached, circling in gentle arcs, touching wings or claws lightly in a sign of respect. Even the young, previously skeptical dragons leaned close, hums vibrating in approval. The human child, small and fragile, had passed the trial of fire, not by fighting but by understanding, patience, and courage. The lesson was clear: true strength was not in domination but in heart, mind, and respect. From that day forward, the child was no longer simply a human living among dragons. The trial of fire had cemented a place in their society. The child's presence was accepted, admired, and in some ways revered. A bond had formed, unbreakable and tested, that bridged species, fear, and history. Legends would one day speak of the small human who faced the trial of fire and emerged not just unharmed, but respected and understood by dragons far older and wiser than anyone could imagine. The elder whispered softly as the child rested against a warm-scaled flank, "This is only the beginning. Your heart has shown the way. Others will follow, and one day even the oldest dragons will see through your eyes." And so, atop the canyon, with smoke curling and the heat of molten rock below, a small human child, brave and wise, had proven something remarkable: that courage and calm could bridge worlds, and that trust, once earned, could create legends that would outlast time itself. The canyon was quiet now, the trial of fire complete, yet the dragons remained alert, circling the human child with eyes that gleamed like molten gold. Word of the child's courage and calm had spread quickly through the dragon court. Elders, guardians, and younglings alike gathered, their massive forms casting shadows over the stone plateau. The air was thick with smoke, heat, and expectation. Today was not just a trial completed, it was a moment that would change the course of dragon history. The golden elder descended, wings folding neatly, and touched the child's shoulder with a clawed hand, careful not to harm, yet powerful enough to show authority. "You have proven yourself," the elder rumbled, voice deep and vibrating. "Not by strength, nor by fire, nor by flight, but by heart, mind, and courage. Today you are no longer merely a visitor among dragons. You are part of us, part of our lineage, part of our court." The child looked up, wide-eyed, unsure at first. The words were heavy, carrying centuries of tradition and respect. A hush fell across the plateau. One by one, dragons stepped forward, each laying a scaled claw gently upon the child's head or shoulders. A silent acknowledgement passed between them, a gesture older than memory, a pledge of respect and trust. The human child felt warmth, strength, and something indescribable, like the heartbeat of the canyon itself flowing into their veins. For the first time, the child understood what it meant to belong here. Then came the ceremonial crown, not made of gold or jewels, but of living firestones, glowing softly, hovering over the child as the eldest dragon summoned the energy of the court. The crown descended slowly, settling on the child's head without weight, yet carrying the presence of dragons older than any star. The flames did not burn, but filled the mind with clarity and courage. The child felt a surge of energy, a connection to every dragon present, and to every dragon that had ever walked the world. "You are the first of your kind to receive this honor," the elder said, voice echoing across the canyon. "You carry our respect, our history, and our hopes. You will be our ambassador, our bridge to worlds beyond, our legend in the making." Dragons around the plateau rumbled and hissed in agreement, a chorus of sound that resonated like thunder. Even the younglings, once wary, nudged closer, curious and reverent. The child, still small by dragon standards, lifted hands toward the dragons, feeling their immense energy. One dragon, a silver-scaled guardian, lowered its massive head, allowing the child to place a hand on its snout. Another, a bronze elder, coiled around gently, smoke curling from nostrils, eyes soft with approval. Each dragon offered a silent promise: protection, respect, and kinship. The human child returned the gestures in turn, careful, humble, yet confident. Above, the sky darkened with the shadows of circling dragons, yet it felt protective rather than threatening. The canyon, once a place of trial and fear, now radiated calm and honor. The child's heart beat in rhythm with the elders, each pulse a bridge between species, a signal that humans and dragons could coexist, could trust, could learn from each other. It was a lesson the dragons themselves had never expected, and yet it had been proven true. The golden elder spoke again, softer this time, as if sharing a secret. "Remember this moment, small human. You carry more than courage, you carry hope. You remind us that even creatures of flame and claw can recognize heart. Lead wisely, act with care, and you will be remembered for all time." The child nodded, understanding that this was not just an honor, but a responsibility, a duty to represent both humans and dragons in ways words could barely describe. From that day forward, the child walked among dragons not as an outsider, not as a curiosity, but as royalty in their own right. Young dragons followed for guidance, elders offered counsel, and the council of dragons deferred to the human's judgment when wisdom mattered. The human had entered the court as a lost child and left as a bridge between species, a symbol of what courage, calm, and understanding could achieve. The canyon echoed with the sounds of dragons soaring, wings beating against smoke-filled skies, while below the human stood, small yet unshakable, crowned with firestones radiating calm authority. In that moment all present, dragons and humans alike, felt the birth of a legend. One that would be told for generations, the tale of a human child who faced fire, fear, and the unknown, and was welcomed into the heart of dragonkind as royalty. As the sun set behind jagged peaks, flames from the molten fissures reflected in the child's eyes, mirroring the glowing firestone crown. The dragon's wings cast long shadows, but those shadows felt protective, like guardians watching over a new dawn. The court would remember this day forever, and the human child would carry the story beyond the canyon, beyond worlds, as proof that even in a realm of beasts, heart and courage could create kings and queens of any species. And so, atop the canyon, surrounded by dragons who had once seemed untouchable, a small human stood tall. The crown was light, but the honor immense. Eyes met across species, understanding passed silently, and a new era began, one of trust, respect, and shared destiny. The human child, once lost, had been found, and in finding a place among dragons, had carved a legend that would shine as brightly as any star in the galaxy. Legends would speak of this day, of the trial of fire, and of the child crowned among dragons. But for now the child simply breathed, felt warmth, and knew that they had truly arrived at home.